Hello, I am Andisa Johnson, and today we are having a conversation with Cores Vandiver. Born in New Orleans, Louisiana, Cores currently resides in Houston, Texas, by way of Atlanta. It was in Georgia where he took a serious interest in filmmaking after he served as an apprentice to a local director. Eventually, he received some serious mentoring advice from director Spike Lee that fueled his hunger to take his talents to the next level. Now as an educator and an award-winning filmmaker with his original footing in the Atlanta music industry, Cores brings over 12 years of experience in the film TV industry as a writer, producer, director, and over 10 years of experience in education. His scripts have landed attachments and interest from actors such as Ryan Gosling, Idris Elba, Skyland Brooks, Nate Parker, Yahtzee Cornialdi, and even Oscar winners such as Mahershala Ali, as well as studios, producers, agencies, and management such as Sony Columbia, David Goyer's Phantom 4, Kevin Turin, Tyler Perry's 34th Street Films, Anonymous Content, ICM, CAA, WME, and more. Hello, Cores. How are you today?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
That's a mouthful, that bio. I didn't expect you to read all that. I know you cut it short too. So.
Yeah, I did. So can you take us on your journey of how you found your love of the arts to where you are now?
Wow, never had that question before. I think I was always just an artsy kid. Like my parents, they were very what's the word? They cultivated that at an early age. I was born in New Orleans, as you mentioned, which is obviously a place, known for jazz and blues. And so we were big on music. I was big on music as a young kid. And my dad had bought instruments. My brother had a sax. And I think I played the recorder and like a violin or something. I wasn't very good at it. Then my younger brother got into cello and bass, and he was very good at it. But I was still very good at playing music by ear, so we'll play, mess with the sax and do stuff like that. But we go out to the French Quarter and like break dance and like try to get money and whatever. And but when my mom discovered I could draw really well as a kid. I was, since I was probably 4 or 5 years old, I was drawing. And she had took me to art classes, and it spurred a lot of interest for me, really, in like comic books. And I think probably that was the intro to kind of putting art and storytelling together initially. Even though I was in love with television, it wasn't necessarily, it didn't feel the same. So I was just a comic book kid and drew a lot of Spider-Man and, Incredible Hulk and that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. I used to play the violin too, and I wasn't good at it either.
Oh, I don't feel so bad.
So you kind of answered my next question about your parents cultivating your gifts. Do you want to add anything about how they cultivated your gift of the arts?
Yeah, I mean, it was my dad was just always very encouraging about me as an artist. It was just like, oh, that, look at that boy draw, check that out. And my mom was really big on like, oh, let's go to art class. You know what I mean? Like she was like, go, she took me to this, I think it was a museum in New Orleans, and I would paint there, and paint, paint fruit and, do all that kind of stuff that they do. Apparently my fruit was pretty good. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I ever really caught the knack for painting. I think I was just very good at drawing. And in fact, I mean, she actually entered me into some competition and where, I got some kind of national notice as an artist, even as a kid. I think it was like 8 or 9. And, people were calling the house and, so it was really interesting at that stage. I think as I got older, they kind of, got used to it. And so, as most parents do, they want you to go to college and do things. And had, I believe I sent my art to Marvel Studios, to the comic book company. And I was still in high school, and I'd gotten a letter back saying, "Hey, you're pretty good.
Wow.
You should look us up. When you get out of school." And I told my parents, I had this opportunity, and everybody kind of was like, "Whatever. Like, make sure you get, a job, doing something that's going to pay."
Mm,
Uh, Lo and behold, I kind of wish I'd hopped on that Marvel train.
yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that same answer from a lot of people, that their parents or family members tell them to get a real job that pays, but they don't realize that these jobs do pay. Um,
Yeah, I mean, in this hindsight is 2020. You don't really have an idea about how much nobody,
right.
there was no Indeed, and you didn't know like how much a comic book artist made. Um, and then your parents are looking out for you in the future. A black kid, trying to get a job, and that whole thing that you really don't understand as a kid, and the experiences, that your parents have gone through.
Mhm.
And even my generation was just different. Like I grew up in the South, which was still, highly racist when I was young. And I had a lot of experiences with the Klan and just different things, even as a kid my age. And so it was very, yeah, I grew up in that kind of environment as well, with parents who were very intentional about, uh, you know, me as a young black man, also my brothers, having two other brothers at the time, and um, intentional about, really my mom, especially intentional about faith, my walk with God, and what that looked like with Christ. And so those things were like really intentional in my household.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So,
Mhm.
what fueled your hunger to pursue filmmaking?
Hmm. You know, that story there's so many different stories.
Hmm.
Um, there's, I was in the music business, uh, um, and I started off as an artist, and I was rapping at the time, and I wasn't taking it seriously. I honestly had run around in the street for a long time before I was doing that. Um, and I actually met Biggie, the rapper, through a very interesting way. I was at a concert and knew the song "Who Shot You" because my older brother, who was doing these shows around town, he was a DJ, and he was messing around the street too. I mean, that's honestly where I learned it from. But he had a record, that "Who Shot You" record, before it come out, and I was running around in my car playing the song, uh, you know, and I went to a concert. It was on the front row, and he saw me rapping and yanked me up on stage and let me be his hype man. It was like, how'd you know that song? And I told him, and we became, I don't know, friends is probably strong, but acquaintances. And, he really encouraged me to rap. And so take it seriously. And at the time I was, oh, I make more money than you, whatever I would say. Probably wasn't true, but my ego thought it was. Nonetheless, I'd gone through as an artist, and I was on a Def Jam tour, so I had some success, but I never wanted to sign a record deal. I didn't. I actually had gotten saved, and I was rapping really about stuff that I'd been through in the street. But at that point, everybody just thought I was a good rapper, but didn't really know I was talking about God and talking about, these types of things. And so it was not, I being behind the scenes and seeing what was happening, that wasn't what I wanted. And so I was doing management, and I've been working for T-Boss from TLC, with a mentor, James Andrews, was like big Columbia exec. And he had brought me on their team, and I was doing some brand management with him, also with Ludacris and the Red Light District album. And that kind of was segue where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And yeah, so I jumped off of that. And actually, James invited me to a party, and I had began writing some scripts, or a script. It wasn't something. It was one script I had been trying to work on, literally on loose leaf paper. I mean, it was totally do the right thing style, like a notebook. You know, I mean, I was just writing these thoughts, and I went to James' house, and it was, you know, he was having a party, and he was like, "Hey, I got an uncle here. Don't talk to him." You know, like it was like you want to avoid him. He's racist, he's atheist, and he's blind. You know,
Wow.
and I was just like, "This is exactly who I want to talk to." You know, and I beeline for the kitchen, and we started talking. And in the process of me talking to him, I had shared the script idea. I had kind of pitched it, and it was a story that was to star Mos Def as
Wow.
a modern day version of Christ in a story called Son, and it had this hip hop infused story about the gospel. And you know, Jersey was Jerusalem, and you know, he was a carpenter, and you know, and ended up in Brooklyn working for his dad, you know, in construction, and yeah, it was just this whole thing, and I had, you know, the supernatural element to it as well. And after I pitched it, he grabbed me, and I was like, uh oh. And he said, you know, and I try to always recount the story the best I can, but he said something like, um, gosh, I was blind and now I see. And I was just like,
Hmm.
okay, you know, what's going on? And he was like, you just pitched me a hip hop story of a Black Jesus in modern day time, and I believed every word. He was
Wow.
like, he said, I used to be a racist. I don't think I am anymore. And he was like, I used to be an atheist. I don't think I am anymore.
Wow.
And he was like, come live with me in New York. I used to be a screenwriter. I'll teach you how to write.
Wow.
And, you know, he told me he went blind watching Before Sunset with Ethan Hawke, or, you know, I always get them mixed up, Before Sunset, or I don't know, Before Dawn. I don't know, whatever the sequels or movies were. But he went blind in the theaters, eyes closed shut, and he went black. And yeah, that was it. And that thing kind of was the first thing that hit me. And I was just like, I didn't go live with them. You know, honestly,
Sure.
I didn't do that. Um, but it hit me and said, hey, man, if you can, you know, make a blind atheist racist kind of switch lanes, you know, maybe there's a reason for you, you know, becoming this thing and doing this thing.
Wow.
And that's kind of how it started. um yeah, I think there's a couple other incidents that kind of propelled after that. um but that was the catalyst. Andre Buckner was the Atlanta filmmaker. I ended up being an assistant for him.
Mm-hmm.
But it only lasted one day. So I was writing something. I shared it with him. I was trying to make my own project, a short. Um, and I shared this info with him, and he called me into his office and let me go. And I was just like, you know, wow, was it that bad? And he was like, no, it was that good. He was like, I'm telling you right now, if you stay with me, you'll stay with me, and I'll try to keep you forever, and you won't learn anything. He was like, you're already a better filmmaker just from this paper than I'll ever be. And
Wow.
he was like, you need to go do your own thing. And I honestly, I called BS. I was pissed. So I was just like, man, this
Wow.
is BS. You know, I was mad, but I went home and I got on my computer and I put that thing on Craigslist. And about like in an hour, I had like 60 messages from people.
Wow.
Two of them were, one was a producer that I actually knew and had watched an indie film and really liked. And a bunch of my friends, we all watched all the time. And so, you know, I hit him up and he was like, hey, really interested in your story. I can offer you a deal, or I can offer you some money, for your script. And he immediately offered me like $280,000,
Oh
which
my.
honestly, in hindsight, if I would have ever known that this business that never happened, probably would have took the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a wash. It just was. I initially was like, no, I'm good, and hung up. I'm gonna do my own thing. And he called back and he offered me like $500,000.
Wow.
Started thinking about it, and I was a business owner, so I was like, kind of like, we had a car dealership and a family business. In fact, I was in the dealership typing this script at that time, and I was just like, I'm gonna take like $50,000 and put this money on a credit card, or you know, do it, you know, um, do it that way. And so I just said no, I'm good. And then he called back and he offered like a 51-49 deal, which is where he's saying, hey, you'll have the last say, you'll have control. And he offered me like $980,000 toward the budget. And I was like, God, that's a lot of money. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's talk. And he asked for the script. He was like, yeah, just send me the script. I need to read everything, and I get back to you. And I was like, okay, yeah, just give me 3 days or so, and I need to do some work to the script and some polishing, but I'll send it over. Hung up. I was trying to write a short, so I didn't have like 20 pages of a short film that I was working on. So at that moment, I was like, I got to write a feature. So I think I picked up like screenwriting for Dummies, and I started working on the feature. And in 3 days, I wrote this feature film, sent it off to him, and he struck up a deal with me. And I went to LA not shortly after that, but the project had been way more after reading the script than he could even fund. It was like upwards of 40 million bucks. And this huge producer came in and was interested and offered like such a ridiculous amount of money for the script. At that point, I was like, hey, let's take it. And it was another guy who would come in as a manager on his team. And they argued back and forth with this guy, and he was a whale and he was a gorilla, and he wanted an 800-pound gorilla. He wanted to take over. And I was like, hey, let's just take the money and go our separate ways. Like, you make a movie with your portion, I'll make something with mine and do whatever. And they literally argued us out of the deal. And at that moment, I quit. I fired them. But I, at that point, had enough courage. And that's when I went to LA, actually, after that. So, long story, but.
Wow, that's amazing story. Thank you for sharing that too. So we will be right back.
Son, I want you to always remember this when it comes to doing the right thing. Let nothing stop you. Sometimes you gotta make hard decisions, even break a rule or two. But as long as it's good in your heart and you're doing the right thing, let nothing stop you. Okay?
Welcome back to our conversation with Cors Vandiver. So my next question is, it's a little lengthy, but it's not that lengthy. But so upon leaving Michigan State University and embarking on your professional career, were there any moments of fear or self-doubt you had to overcome as a Black man operating in a space viewed primarily as a white art form?
It's funny, like, and the thing with Michigan State is I literally was, honestly, I did that. I started taking classes after I was in the industry, because I was feeling like I didn't have anything to validate myself, even though I had already produced stuff and done stuff. And so, I was, seeking to look better on paper. honestly. And so I wasn't a kid who was like going to school and, you know, left school at that time. So going backwards, going into the industry, I didn't really experience the race issues the same way. And so I experienced them in a different way, but that gave me a lot of knowledge on how the industry actually worked. And it gave me a lot of insight, which I always share with people as much as I can who are not in the space or not, you know, dialed in enough to get that information. And so for me, you know, looking back, I was always surrounded by early coming up, it was either Black filmmakers who were around me, who I saw doing things, or, you know, Black writers, producers. And then after that, you know, there were white producers who helped me, white producers too, actually helped me with my first film and then gave me my actual first job.
Wow.
Working on a film. So because I went to LA, initially I was part of a TV show. Steven Spielberg had a show. I didn't make the final round, but I had made like the second round. And I was just like, I'm gonna drive out. I was like, you know, people find me interesting enough that, you know, I was like, I could be, you know, mentored by Steven Spielberg or be on the show, you know, I'm gonna see what happens. But it was also not just that. It was again more of a prompt, and I hadn't gone yet, but you know, I felt like God was saying go. So I hopped in the car, packed up everything, and drove to LA. Ended up getting a job. It was a Black producer who hired me to write a script about John Legend. Um, uh, he was doing a doc, but wanted a script, and I wrote that, got paid, and then I ended up getting a job on a production, and you know, it was a film and a TV show going at the same time. So I was working with, you know, these people, and at the end of that, the producer, you know, had, I mean, by the end of I think the first week working, I had been promoted 6 times, and so by the end of the first week, I was the producer's assistant, and it turned out he owned like this huge lighting company. Asked me what I wanted to do after the show was over. And I told him I was working on my first film, and he took me to his lighting company and just started loading stuff into my car. And initially, I didn't have any idea what he was doing. He was like, "This is for you, you know,
Wow.
make your movie." And then he took me to another producer friend and director who was there, and told him about me. And he was just like, "You got whatever you need, a crew. You got my crew. You have anything. And you know, here's a hard drive." And it was like a really expensive hard drive, like $2,000 or something. He's like, "You're gonna need it. Bring it back after you're finished." So I ended up bringing that hard drive back to that director, and it turned out he was moving off the Universal lot that day and into a studio, and he had to deal with stars. And he interviewed me. He asked me, could I edit? And I said, yes. I was taking these Time Warner classes that Oprah took a program, a producer program through Time Warner. They don't have them anymore. But it was really a really amazing program, community program. You come in, you learn all about production, and then you know you get a producer certification, and afterwards you get access to the studio equipment, anything. And so you could literally run a show on your own channel. It's pretty crazy. And so I was doing that program, had finished, and I thought I knew editing. And so I said, yeah, you know. And when I got in the car, I called my girlfriend, who was now my wife for the past, you know, 12 years. But I said, hey, I just got this job and I have no idea what I'm doing, you know? And I thought, you know, I could edit. They all the big productions edit on Avid, and I was editing on iMovie, so I thought it was all the same. I thought it was Avid. Realized at that moment, I think I went to Borders at it was gosh, in Culver City. There's the popular mall, but I can't remember. Anyway, there was a Borders there. I again went to Avid for Dummies and started making these notes. And I think that Monday was the weekend. I went in on the Monday, did the interview. I wrote stuff on my back of my hand, and I had sticky notes up my sleeve, and this guy,
Wow.
he took me into the bay, and he was like, yeah, show me this, show me that. And I'm doing stuff and sweating and looking at my palm of my hand and trying to figure stuff out. And he's like, yeah, you look like you know what you're doing. And
Wow.
he slapped me on the back and walked out. He was like, you're hired. And I just collapsed right there on the computer. It was like, thank God. And I ended up working. It turned out to be a show for Martin Lawrence.
Oh,
And I ended up working for, Martin and this guy, Mike Bohughes, and another comedian, Doug Collins, and working with those guys, mainly with Doug and Mike, for the next 4 seasons. And I was promoted, again, just went from editing or assistant editor to editing to camera, doing BTS camera work to directing, BTS directing, and doing just doing writing sketches. But there was also other work. So I was doing commercials and filling in, doing pilots and different things for this guy. Not really knowing that wasn't beneficial to me in terms of credits. So I wasn't getting all the credits that I should have been getting, nor was I getting all the pay I should have been getting. Sometimes I was just kind of getting cut a check, from, a bigger check from somebody else. But, I got a lot of experience, and, so it was a fun time. And eventually I left.
wow, that's amazing. That is so amazing. I've never thought to like get one of those writing for dummies or editing for dummies. Like I only know how to use iMovie. I never learned how to use Avid. I never thought about getting that book. Maybe I need to start, but my kids, they self-taught themselves how to edit. So yeah. So
yeah. Kids, I mean, there's so much kids do with technology now.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. The last time I really used the editing stuff in the studio, I was in undergrad. I had been my 3rd year in undergrad, and I literally would spend 8 hours in the studio trying to edit. I don't even remember what program it was, but yeah, that was 98, 97, 98. So I don't even.
Maybe it was Premiere, probably Premiere.
Yeah, probably.
Which is similar to Final Cut. Yeah.
It probably was. I don't know. So what inspires you? What inspires you? I can't even talk. What inspires you these days?
I mean, I think one, just foundationally, obviously, I, care deeply about doing things that I can, I can feel like when I die, I gotta say, well done. But, that's not a but. There's connected to that are things that are meaningful, which obviously attracts me to, those human rights stories and, different things. But I really just like good stories, and the excitement of putting something together that I want to see, and hopefully that an audience would want to see is what really drives me. And I mean, I'm probably on paper, I experience this all the time. People are very impressed and they're like, oh, this is amazing, but I haven't arrived for me yet. And so for me, there's so much for me to accomplish and so many things people don't know about that I'm doing, and especially as a filmmaker and things that I'm working towards. So those things are very important to me, and those things keep me motivated, reaching those goals.
Okay. So this next question is just a little lengthy too. So many people relocate to Atlanta because of the film scene. Most with no experience, only wanting to be in front of the camera. A lot of times they don't feel it's important to get the training, work as an apprentice, or even get mentoring in their field of interest. Can you share with us the importance of getting training? And can you also share the importance of working as an apprentice and having someone mentor you?
Oh, I personally, I believe in it wholeheartedly, and it's something I try to do with people. You know, I meet people, I share, you know, I give information, I teach, you know, whatever I can do, because one is just doesn't happen for us as a community. Um, you know, it's rare in general for Black people to impart nowadays for whatever reason that is. I don't know. And I think, uh, you know, if you go back and you go back, you don't have to go back too far. I mean, 60s, you know what I mean, 50s, 40s, you know, parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, you know, sisters, brothers, they were teaching each other different things, and they were, you know, holding each other accountable for those things that they were being taught. And so there was, you know, the idea of trade, right? And, you know, learning a trade, and you know, this is how you know, foundationally build a house, or this is how you milk a cow, and, you know, grab eggs, or, you know, the various things. And I grew up, you know, my uncle, one of my uncles, was an orange grove foreman, and my younger brother and I, you know, worked in the orange grove, um, you know, with a bunch of our, you know, his Haitian tenants and a bunch of, you know, Haitian refugees that he would help, you know, when they come to the United States, help get housed, and, um, you know, give them jobs. And, you know, that was also a big influence on me. But, you know, working in the orange groves and seeing how hard that work was, how hard it was just to make $100 or even 80 or 50 bucks. People have no idea how hard that work is. And, you know, some of these guys, they work so hard, you know, because they had to feed their family somehow. And so the bottom line is looking at passing things on to people. There's a benefit to that. Um, you know, and I think now today, everything is kind of a, you know, look out for me. And if I help somebody, it's going to endanger my career, endanger my steps, kind of the crabs in the barrel mentality thing that happens. I believe what God has for you is for you. Um, I mean, I have been stepped on. You know what I mean? I have been taken advantage of, but that's just life, and it's part of, you know, if you're doing things in love and you're doing things to be responsible and help people, then, you know, it's just kind of, you don't need to expect anything in return, and that's hard. Um, but it's just the way it is. So for me, you know, again, wishing I had that. I mean, as much as, you know, my conversation with Spike was, it was a one-time hard conversation, but he gave me that time. You know what I mean? And I appreciated it. And I was able to thank him down the road, you know what I mean? And hug him down the road. And that's important, you know, in the same, you know, like I said, I was fired after one day with, you know, my mentor, you know, Andre, but he, you know, he gave me his insight, he gave me his wisdom. And, you know, I mean, that script that I ended up writing, you know, that got all that attention, you know, it landed in the hands of the person I wrote it for. I wrote it for Idris Elba. And I remember that actually happening, you know, my manager at the time setting up a meeting with Idris Elba to read my script, and, you know, Idris, you know, sitting down with me and telling me he wanted to do it. And you know, that blew my mind. You know, it blew my mind that you can write something, you can you can see it, you can believe it's for somebody, you can put that thing in their hands, and they're going to give you a yes or a no. You know, because with those yeses, there've been plenty of no's. You know what I mean? And there've been unexpected things. You know, Ryan Gosling was an unexpected thing. You know, with the project, and so, you know, it's. I think I'm getting off on a tangent, but the bottom line is, I think you need to be able to share your gift with people, in order to help them. You just never know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's important too. That's the whole reason behind Atlanta Film and TV being formed in the first place, because there's so many people that didn't know. There's a lot of people that don't know, the correct way to do things. They don't know how to, like, what a non-disclosure agreement is. So I share that information because I think it's important to know what you're signing your name to. Or if you don't know, maybe consider getting somebody that does. And, because a lot of times people share things on social media that they're not supposed to, even though they sign their name to something. So I feel like that is important. And I love educating people.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just to say something really quick about that, like actors share self-tapes all the time. You're not supposed to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to do that. There's private information that these directors and people trust with you. And so sometimes people are blowing their gigs, like just by sharing that information on social media, directors saying, I can't trust this person. They may not even know any better.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, I have blog posts. People tend to not read. So I'm like, well, maybe I should shift to doing TikToks because people watch videos. So I teach through that as well. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You don't strike me as the type of woman that would keep secrets.
We all have secrets, Troy.
Honey, you better know Michelle is the best makeup artist in town. Practices on herself all the time.
Everything has a price. You've been running all your life. When are you going to stop running? When I don't have a reason to.
I love you. And I love baby girl. And I promise I got you.
You don't have to do this by yourself. I'm here.
So you don't care?
It's not about caring, it's about privacy.
Why are you so obsessed with this case? Because I made a promise. Yeah, a promise you couldn't keep.
You are one lucky woman.
That I am.
What are you doing? I'm not lying!
Everything has a price.
Welcome back to our conversation with Cors Vandiver. So I read that you come from a family of educators. Would you say that having an education in a field where most will say is not important, would you say that it is? And can you share why you feel it's important?
Well, again, like I wasn't actually traditionally educated in film. Like I totally went at it like the way a lot of filmmakers go at it. I honestly believe that it's not to say that education is important. I just don't think that that's necessarily traditional education matters in terms of depending on what route you want to choose. If you are a person who is like, I don't like risk, right? If I'm a risk averse person, then go to an AFI, right? It's the best film, one of the best films in the world. Go to USC, go to UCLA, go to these places where they're esteemed. And if you get a degree, from those people and you're trying to work in the industry, you're going to get a job, right? And you're going to work in the industry. Are you going to be doing creative stuff? Who knows? Probably not, or it may be pretty hard unless you're producing something out of school and these guys hire you and now you have, the opportunity to say, hey, I'm working as a producer, who's been hired under a company. So there's that side of it. And then there's a side of you just want to be a filmmaker, you want to make stuff. You got to get on set and just experience it. And, try to get on a good set, try to get on, around people who are really talented. And, watch, observe, and build relationships. And, you know, you build those relationships and you learn and you go back to those same people and say, hey, I'm trying to make a movie. You know, here's what I'm doing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to learn through the process, budgeting, etc. You know, all the things you need to know, you know, to make a film. But I truly believe nobody is going to be able to teach you the aspects of filmmaking better than actually being in the experience of doing it or walking in the experience of doing it. So education is important, but there's that caveat to it. So
More like hands-on, just going and doing it. Because I did go back to school for creative writing. I did know how to write, but I didn't know how to write for film and television. So that was the reason why I went. And a lot of times people think that you do need a degree, but you know, I do feel like you said, it is important to get like that real world experience.
Yeah,
Well.
yeah, and I mean that's still good. It's still good if you went and you wanted to learn writing. You know, it's an amazing way to do it. Honestly, I wish I could do it that way. You know, even now sometimes just go back and sit under somebody and hear what they have to say. Which I've done classes and different things, obviously, but you know, I'll be honest, it's never enough. Like I don't know how many I've like done Stanford, I've done New York Film Academy, Harvard, you know, Michigan State. Like I've taken so many classes and different things just to see, because I keep hoping that I'm going to learn something that I don't already know, or that's, you know, going to shift the way I do things as a writer. And most of those things still, you know, come from, honestly, from magazines and watching interviews and behind the scenes, you know, reading books that, you know, I bought. You know, those are where my greatest learning experiences have come from.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for sharing your opinion on that. We have a high school senior, so
Okay.
hearing, I think I'm gonna let him hear what your opinion, so that's not coming from me.
All right.
So, what would be a piece of advice to someone wanting to pursue writing, directing, or producing films?
You need stamina. You gotta really make sure this is something you want to do. You know, there are a lot of statistics out there that don't float around in film, but you know, there are a couple that stick with me all the time and I share. One is a feature film, just on average, takes 9 years to make. To put that in perspective, that's, you know, your favorite indie movie from A24 or even lesser, or a big Marvel movie, you know, Spider-Man and, you know, Avengers and the likes of those guys. These movies take forever. You know what I mean? I have projects I've been on 7 years, 8 years. Birth of a Nation took 9 years to make. You know, and so Nate, you know, was working on that forever. You know, thank God, you know, he called me and he was on the tail end of, you know, the 3 or 4 year journey after that, you know what I mean? So, but movies take a long time to make. And so, and there are a lot of no's. There are a lot of no's. There are a lot of, this will never get made. You know, you can't, you know, there are a lot of things, you know, so that's the one thing. You have to have a stamina for no. You have to, you know, and you have to and do a story that you really want to tell. But the caveat that I share with people is make sure it's a story that's marketable. Because this business is not a business. People think, like, one of the things that's unfortunate, and it's fortunate, but it's unfortunate for us, is we feel the need to educate and inform with every story we make. Hollywood isn't really looking for that. They're looking for you to make films that entertain. If you can creatively educate and entertain, no problem. Right? But it's not what they're doing. You know what I mean? And honestly, the average white consumer is not out there looking for some education or educational information. And honestly, now I'd almost push down to millennial, Gen Z, Gen whatever, Gen after that, they're not looking for that either, which is why you hear, conversations about trauma and, the trauma is too much. It's, I don't want to dumb down any situation like that, but I mean, everybody has a choice to watch something. You know what I mean? Like, if it's not for you, don't watch it. But I think, what happens is, people start to step on people's art and creativity because they don't agree with it. And that stifles a segment or section of somebody's art and creativity. And so I think we have to, I don't know. I would like to see us grow tougher as a people because that's who we've been. I grew up, like I said, I grew up fighting Klansmen as a kid. So trauma, it's like we eat trauma for breakfast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to let that stop me, nor am I going to say that somebody's work is going to deter me from moving forward in life because I have a choice to turn on something or not. Do I agree with everything I see? Absolutely not. But I have a choice not to watch it, right? So, we control what we ingest. And I think there's also that aspect of taking responsibility for what you want to put out there for people to consume as a filmmaker. So that'd probably be the last part of the advice. So yeah, those things, stamina, being able to take the no's, being able to take responsibility for what you put out as an artist. Probably was one more, but we'll go with those.
That was some great advice. People, including me, needed to hear that. So do you have anything else you would like to share with us?
I don't know. I guess not. I mean, I'm currently working on some great stuff, and I have a deal with a major studio now, multi-million-dollar deal with a major studio and distribution with that studio. And, we're expecting for me to make a, debut project, which I wrote and producing and will be directing, hopefully mid 2022, with a, I won't say the name, but it's a very well-known Marvel character, star, Marvel Universe star. And so, I mean, maybe my parents didn't quite mess up since I still have that connection there. And, who knows, maybe I will be doing a Marvel movie one day. Definitely a dream of mine. But yeah, so I have some other things working, doing some stuff down the pike, doing some stuff with some professional athletes, shows, pitches, NFL, NBA guys, and working through sports agencies. Rick Ross actually has a sports agency, so I've been working with some people from his team. So it's a lot of different things coming down the pike. I can't even think of them all, but I'm really excited about what's happening. Oh, there's another feature I may be shooting soon as well. And then finishing a feature film that we started kind of got looped around the pandemic. And so gonna finish that one in January, maybe shooting another feature in December, and shooting a short film that we want to turn into a feature in December called Ahmad with a friend of mine, Dario Harris. I talked about him when you were at Morehouse. But he's the guy, he just won an Emmy for a project he did. So we'll be directing together, actually, a story about a kid named Ahmad. And he was a 6-year-old who was shot by his white neighbor back in the 90s. He was killed by a teenage boy. And so it's his cousin. And Ahmad is his cousin. And it's a powerful story, his family trying to get over his death. And this kid gets out of prison and comes to work with his older brother. So Ahmad's older brother now has to deal with the murderer of his brother being his coworker. So that's the story we're telling next that I'm excited about as well. So a lot of things happen.
That is exciting. That is exciting. You'll have to share, when all that comes out with us.
Yeah, I will. I certainly will.
So how can people connect with you?
Social media, obviously, Not super big on social media, but I try to do my best there. So it's my full name on Instagram, Korstian1, at Korstian1. And that's KORSTIAAN 1 and that's IG. Facebook is Korstian.Vandiver. And Twitter at Kors, KORS. Michael Kors is probably gonna try to get it back. It can't happen. I get so many people asking me for shoes and watches. And then yeah, I mean, and then my website, www.korstianvandiver.com. You can go there as well and reach me. Yeah, so thank you. I hope that was you got some information, and I enjoyed the interview.
Thank you for joining us on our Atlanta Film and TV's Conversations with Atlanta's Movers and Shakers. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.